It's the final episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything Wrong with Dark Side Dimensions. Unless GX comes out in the meantime, but get to that when we get to that. Also, I didn't give credit to this last time, so I'm just gonna give it credit now. Great job with the 20th Century Fox opening, dude.
Hello everyone and welcome to Everything Wrong with Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions. If you watched my Pyramid of Light video back in Christmas of last year, it's going to be similarly formatted to that one, where it's more of a review rather than me nitpicking and calling out wrong rulings to death, because it's a 2-hour film rather than 50 episodes of a show, because there's only so much dueling that can happen in 2 hours, and there's only so
surprisingly
much stuff that you
a
get
few
wrong. Even if it's a review, I gotta keep the stupid
Actually, they keep
Everything
quite a
Wrong
bit
with
wrong.
slapped on it, because people don't click it unless it does.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
It's a sad fact of life. Sometimes you're kind of just stuck with a slogan. And then everyone died. The end. I would have loved if that was the end of the movie. Just like, we put back together the puzzle, and then everyone died. The end. Huh, short movie.
Overall, I really liked this film, even if it is nostalgia pandering, and it
And it's
got
not
me good.
perfect.
Not gonna lie, it hit all the right notes for the most part.
And
All
it
the
looks
redesigns
gorgeous.
are really great. I think the person who benefited the most was Mokuba.
If only the recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Series had designs as simplistic as good as this.
I am
It was
nothing
really
but
awesome
grateful
how they were able
before
to get
kids
back
killed
all
that.
the original voice actors to play these characters for the movie.
Yeah.
And it was just as impressive the fact that they were able to still do these voices all these years later. Because sometimes
Dan
voice
Green's
actors just
surprisingly
aren't
enough,
able
Dan
to do a
Green's been
voice if
doing
it's
old
been that
voices
long
too.
since they've done it. In some instances, they can get close to what
I
they
think it's
used to be
because
able
Duel
to,
Links
but
was
it won't
somewhat
be 100%
nearby,
like it
so
used
they
to
had a
be,
bit
and
of,
you would
you know,
listen back and be like, oh, this sounds a
bit of
little
memory.
different, especially if you have a trained ear to notice this. For instance, I remember a few years back attending one of Crispin Freeman's voice acting classes. He was telling a story about how Eric Stewart, the voice of Kaiba, had to relearn to do the voice of James and Brock because it had been years since he'd done it. Leading up to the release of the movie, they did put out some interviews from the actors, notably Eric Stewart and Dan Green. It's really great to see just how much Dan Green seems to enjoy being able to play this role again.
And that's
It
great.
feels so good to come back after all these years, but it also feels like reuniting with old friends, meaning the characters themselves.
I hope he's not
And so,
just
you know,
saying
being
that,
able
but I
to
trust
give
Dan
Kaiba
Green.
a snarky remark or channel the Dark Magician or
Yeah.
what have you. Yeah, it feels like we're turning to really good friends.
Dan Green is such an underrated voice actor for me. I wish he was in more stuff because
Yeah.
he's hardly in anything anymore compared to the era of 4Kids Saturday morning cartoons where he was in pretty much
Dan
all
Green
of those,
kinda
playing
retired
tons of
from
characters.
voice
He's
acting
like
for a
25 characters in Pokemon. Like I mentioned earlier, this movie's
They're all
fucking
probably
gorgeous.
background though.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, that's fucking hot!
Hell
I still
yeah.
prefer a hand-drawn monster over these 3D ones. They look fine, and 3D can look great at times, but I'll always
Garo
just
animation.
prefer it. That's just my preference, and I'm starting to kind of accept that it's just the way things are now.
Yeah.
At first, I was a little iffy on the new Dark Magician design, but I've come around to think it's actually the better one. I like this
I
hell
love
of a
this
lot
design.
more. It's nice to see the Blue Eyes White Dragon actually be blue eyes and white compared
Yeah.
to when it was just an off shade of teal or cyan in the show.
Yeah.
Which always confused me as a kid going, wait, but that's just the blue dragon.
Yeah.
Why is it called Blue Eyes White Dragon? The new dual disc
Eh.
design is also really interesting. It reminds me a lot of Dead Space's
It was
menu where
like the
it's just
upcoming
holograms floating in
before
front of the
Brains
character.
came
It's
out.
also hooked
It's like
up
a-
to your
looks
brain,
like a
which kind of
prototype.
sounds like a bad idea, but
Well,
it's
this is
cool, so
Kaiba.
fuck it. The movie continues from where the manga left off,
give a
where
shit.
Kaiba wasn't present during the final ceremonial
Which
duel. Instead of
confused
where the
so
anime
many
left off,
people.
where he was there, and he acknowledges
Because
Yugi
more
as
people
being
watched
a
the
king
anime
most
than
of his
read
own,
the
and he's the
manga.
real king of games. Which I mentioned in the season 5 video seemed like the kind of backtrack for this movie, but then a lot of people point out actually that this movie is continuing from the manga, so I thought I would let that be known. and
Kind
give
of feel
somewhat
like
of
there
an
should have been like an
addendum to that
official
video.
statement or
I
something
love
like that,
how
but
much
then again, that
of a
would have been
petty
even more
bitch
confusing.
Kaiba is in this movie. It's great.
Yeah.
Fire whoever designed that bottle. Corp's product shouldn't bend that easily. Yes, don't you think I know that? I invented the blasted thing.
And then he has a straight up I am God speech.
For being reminded of your genius.
Kaiba
That's more
really
like
wants
it.
that salty run back. So he's now in the process of excavating all the Millennium puzzle pieces that went into his tomb when he passed on after the ceremonial battle, so he can reconstruct it, bring the Pharaoh back, and duel him and beat him in front of everybody.
Even though he
so
could just
can
do
claim
that
he's
in the
king of
virtual
games
world,
again.
but it's not
While
the
this
same.
is going on, the main villain of this movie makes his first appearance, Diva, who is a part of this secret group called the Plana. And I don't really like when movies or just series in general do this, where they have a sequel or a new arc, and they introduce introduce a new party who is tangentially related to something that's already been in, but no one's ever mentioned it ever, and it feels like they're retroactively stamping it on for the sake of having everything interconnected.
They
Like in the
basically
Ratchet & Clank
are.
Future series, they made Ratchet a race of secret super people who sealed away all these monsters, and he's the last of his kind.
Even though that Angela was also there.
Along with
Oops.
Clank now being related to these Time Lord robots.
Kinda
even
reminding
though
the
he was
Jak
just an
and
assembly
Daxter
line error and was
precursor
built
twist at the
wrong
end of the
compared
movie.
to all the other robots that were just used to
Or
be
that
killing
movie
machines for
game
direct back
series.
in the first game. But they kind of just
Great.
retconned and added things on for the sake of having their new story. Bleach also did this, where, oh, Ichigo's mom was actually a Quincy, so that makes Ichigo part Quincy too. But why? Why do you keep adding on more things? Wait, then if Ichigo's
Yeah,
mom
to
was a
make more
Quincy,
stories.
why could she?
Stop asking so many questions.
Yeah.
Shoddy's their master. It feels like
is like
he should have
she's
brought
shoddy
this
again,
up during
though.
the ceremonial duel, or at least as it's ending. He's like, "Hey guys, actually, I have this group of
I
children.
think you ever
who
saw
may
Shoddy
turn
without the
evil.
frickin'
Hopefully
turban
they
on, so
don't,
it's nice
and
to
they'll
see
come
his
and
head.
kill you, but they have the
Or
power to
everything.
disintegrate everything." Like these are the issues that come to mind when you have one of these tacked-on things that come in later. Is you always wonder, well, why did no one ever bring them up until now?
Screw it, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! I already turned my brain off.
Confiscated your dual disc for polishing it in class last week.
Whoops.
Happy? I got your dual disc back.
Sure did.
Never change, for kids. Never change.
I do
So
like
Diva's
one of the
going
jokes
around
they
giving
make,
everybody
though.
to not feel good.
Can't you know
Then
not to go-
confronts Kaiba,
don't
but
you know the speed
Kaiba
limit?
is
It's-
so
no, I'm going
determined
too
to
fast.
get his rematch. He says, "Fuck magic. I'm above magic. You can't
I have
disintegrate me,"
science.
And then summons Obelisk somehow
From
even
out
though
of his
apparently the
deck,
god cards
which is
left the
straight
realm
up
of the living when the
cheating.
Tem passed
But then again,
on.
he gets
And
a great
everybody's shitting their
one-liner
pants
with,
like,
"It's
"How
not a
the fuck did he
monster,
do
it's
this?"
a god."
Kaiba seriously steals the show with this movie.
Yeah,
This is
the
the
Joey
Kaiba show.
Dream
You can just
scene.
feel the love for this character they had.
I
as
got a
writers.
shiny
They
new dual
completely
disc and
understood
you
what
don't.
makes him likable, and people root for him, even though he is a dick a lot of the time.
And that's
I
why they
how
love
they just
him.
completely doubled down at how
Look at them, he's just
obsessive
staying in the
to
middle of a
borderline
freaking crosswalk
crazy
with his
is
busy
about
traffic.
his pride and his title that he needs to reclaim from the Pharaoh. That he defies the laws of whatever magic they have and summons a god.
science.
This is so stupid that it
I
loops
love
back
it.
around to being the best
Yeah.
thing ever. And since they excavated
Yeah.
the Millennium Puzzle from the Tomb of
So
the Pharaoh,
bad, it's
you know
great.
what that means. The Millennium Ring's back, and by extension, Zork.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Well, it's just Bakura, so you know. I
One
mean,
of the
Bakura
biggest
is Zork,
differences
but you know.
between the Japanese version and the English dub. In the English dub, when Joey's being erased by Diva, instead of being rescued by a Tem or the spirit of a Tem, he saves himself through the memories of his friends, because that is something that Diva can't take away from him, because there are some things you just can't ever forget, which seems kind of like a cop-out, but in this case, I do like it more, because it
Yeah.
does feel like they're still referencing back to the moral and the end of the ceremonial duel where everybody goes,
I do like that.
we won't
Atem
forget
kind
you,
of
you're
feels
still
like an
alive in our
asshole,
hearts.
whereas
You've helped us
believing in
grow
your
and change
friends
in a
is
way we'll
kind of
never
just
be
an
able to
underlying
forget.
thing in the
Rather
original
than
series.
everybody just being completely incapable to do anything without him, because the whole moral of this story in the movie is
One is
moving on with
Atem
your
saves
lives
his
and
ass,
growing
the
into a
other is
person of
Joey
your own, which
saves
we'll talk more
himself
about in a few
through
minutes.
his friends.
I also liked when Diva confronting Bakura started to become conflicted with his resolve and what he's doing. He's like, maybe this isn't the right thing to do.
They're
Not
actually
saying
giving
that
Bakura some
having a
character.
one-note villain or having a simplistic
Ryu, if
villain
you
is a
want, just
bad
go
thing. I
different,
just
just so you
think
can
that
tell the
having
difference.
too much of one type gets old rather fast. Like, if every villain is one note, then there isn't anything to make them stand out from one another. But at the same time, if you start giving all of your villains a deep backstory, unless you're a super competent writer, they're going to start becoming convoluted and contrived, or they start falling into a formula and repeating the same motivations and backstories, which again muddles the differences between the other villains, making it harder for them to stand out individually.
Yu-Gi-Oh's
Marvel started
really
having this
guilty
issue
with
after a
that.
while where every villain just felt like a repurposed Loki. They taunt
Even
the
though
heroes
Loki did
and
it
then they
best.
dastardly laugh like all of them do and have their
Because Loki
monologue
was
that's
entertaining.
somewhat tangentially related to philosophy. Sometimes about human life, others about worth in front of the heroes while they're at their mid-story low point.
But Thanos was good, he was different. Ah, shit, that's right, this was a traffic jam. Now I'm just reminded of the freaking Zexal
That's how
scene
my
where
life in a
Yuma
new
meets
world
Kaido.
began. I
Kite.
was reincarnated as a toilet. In order to finish assembling the
Would've been a
puzzle,
very different
Kaiba needs the two
series.
pieces that Diva stole from him. One is in the possession of Yugi, and then the other is in the possession of Diva.
Because
he's
then
going
we
to
couldn't have
hold
a plot
giant tournament
otherwise.
in order to get the two pieces.
Why is it
along
even
with
a
showing
tournament?
off
There's
his
only 3
dual disc
people.
and his new hologram
It's
systems.
not a tournament.
I haven't brought it up until now, but they implemented a new summoning mechanic in this movie called Dimension Summoning, and it's really dumb, and I don't like it. So it allows
Well,
you
it's
to
not
summon
official,
monsters from your
so
hand for
whatever.
pretty
I guess
much
it was just
free,
from the anime,
except
whatever.
you have to use spirit energy in order to summon them, and based upon how much spirit energy you use, it charges up their attack and defense, but it never brings up
I think
spirit
if I
energy
would
is
have
a
done this in the
finite
real
resource.
game, I would have
Does
made
someone
them
have more
like
spirit
pay
energy
life
than the
points
other
for the
if they're
monster's
like a
attack
stronger
points or something like
personality or
that.
something? Do you get any per turn? Is there
Look, they just basically
unlimited
wanna do
amount? Can you
Duelist
dimension
Kingdom.
summon multiple times? It's kind of dumb, but at least it's only during the duels with Diva. During Kaiba's and Yugi's duel, Diva makes a
Unfortunately,
return
that
after
duel gets
losing, but
interrupted.
this time he's possessed by the ring, so I guess that means this is Zork, and that turns out to be the final villain of the
QB
movie.
Zork?
Zork again, I guess, technically.
Well,
They
it's
never
been
really
like
state.
20
I'm
years
glad they went with a
since.
more gross design for possessed Diva, because a lot of the later villains in the newer seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are just very robotic and blocky in a way. They're either just dragons or giant robots or a combination of the two.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see something eldritch and have all these disgusting eyes opening around all of its cubes and having like a fleshy dual disc. That's cool. That's a nice design.
Yeah, it's
now Yugi
something
and Kaiba have
different.
to team up to fight Diva, and the duel is like when Merrick and Bakura fought back in, it was either season 2
Kinda
or season
mixed
3,
with
part
Yugi and
2,
Kaiba
where
versus
each time
Dark,
they took
just 'cause
damage
it's
to their
Yugi and
life
Kaiba,
points,
you
they
know.
started to disappear, which makes sense since the Millennium Ring is involved. And all seems
Yeah.
lost, and Yugi's about to be disintegrated until Kaiba sacrifices himself, and then has my favorite line read that Eric Stewart has had for Kaiba so far.
For him, the Pharaoh. Take this.
Yugi's about to pass out because he only has about 100 life points left, and then the Pharaoh returns. The music starts to swell, and then we get an amazing orchestral rendition
It's
of
gorgeous.
the English
The
dub
only
theme.
sad thing is that there's not a clean rip of this. It's a tragedy. The Pharaoh has returned.
Now, while this scene is really nice
It's
and I
more
do
based on
enjoy
the
it in
Season
the
Zero
moment,
design,
when you
given
think
how
about
fucked
it,
up his
it kind
hair
of
is.
takes away from Yugi's character arc through this movie and undercuts the message of it. I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, the whole movie's about Yugi moving on and becoming his own person and coming into his own as a duelist and no longer needing to rely on a Tem. Especially when the movie opens up and it starts talking about how everybody's going to move on to their separate ways after high school, and Yugi's like,
It's
I
also
want to
more
make
like
a new
a Tem
game, and
just giving
hopefully
a
one day
helping
we could all
hand.
come back together and play it together. I feel like it would have stuck the landing better for the ending if, as Yugi's about to pass out, you would have just saw a vision of a Tem and then got the strength to win on his own rather than a Tem possessing him. He pulls out a card and slaps down Mahad and then vaporizes possessed Diva instantly without any difficulty at all.
Or
But at the end of
explanation.
it all, the day is saved. Everyone goes back to their normal lives, and we see everybody lead off after high school. Taya takes off on her plane to go to America, and everyone's cheering her on, going, bye, we don't miss you.
Yeah.
We see a shot of Diva and his sister walking off into the sunset now that they don't have the powers of the Plana due to the Pharaoh
Fuck their
returning. And
Odeon
then we get to
friend.
Kaiba. Kaiba was like, I told you so, after the Pharaoh returned. So now he decided, I'm going to build a time machine and go back in time.
If I can't bring him to me,
duel
I'll
the
go to
Pharaoh,
him.
and it works. This man is so smart and rich, he could probably fix any issue in the world.
But
he
fuck it,
decides,
card
"Fuck it,
game.
I'm gonna go
Just
back
make
in
it
time
cure
for myself and
cancer,
run back."
solve
And that's
world
something I can
hunger,
fucking
all in
respect.
about
And they
5
handle it
minutes.
perfectly.
But
Kaiba
fuck
just
it.
walks in, doesn't say a word, activates his dual disc, which probably looks like fucking witchcraft to all the Egyptians.
Yeah,
A Tem
all his
smiles
things
and then
is
it
like,
cuts
what
to
the
black.
fuck?
In a more dumber way, it would have had him busted. It's like, I demand my rematch, Pharaoh, or something equally as retarded. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed myself watching this movie. Yeah, it's nostalgia pandering, but what the fuck do you expect to see a sequel movie to a show that ended 13 plus years ago?
Yeah. It's a pretty good movie all around. I'm glad it exists and all that jazz. Dark Side Dimensions. Well, share what you guys think about the movie in your comments below. See ya!